Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast on cybersecurity leadership today. We have a very special guest, Biswadeep, with us to discuss a topic that's incredibly crucial in today's digital world and landscape. The role of Chief Information Security or CISO. This role is becoming increasingly vital for all the organizations looking to protect their data and maintain trust. We will deep dive into understand what does CISO does, how they shape security strategies, and why this role is critical to organizations in today's world. Let's get started with Biswadeep today. All the way from Canada, we can see Biswadeep in morning shades. Me from India in the evening shades. It's a cross-continental podcast today. Over to you, Biswadeep. Do let us know something about this.
Thank you, Anas, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And yes, the weather is really nice here. It's like almost 15, 16 degrees, but the fall weather is one of the best weathers here in North America because of the fall colors. So yes, it's going good here. And yeah, that's how it is. So I think you chose a wonderful topic that is a very interesting, and there is something which is very talked about because 1994-95 when the Citigroup actually introduced this profile CISO, and after that this profile CISO became a very popular word, and it started driving through the industry and spreading through the industry massively. So I'm currently reading a book. I would like to show you this book. This is a wonderful book. The Risk Business by Levi Gundert. And this book basically states how CISO can leverage 3 different programs, which is focused towards like risk-driven, threat-driven, and compliance-driven frameworks, and what is important for your industry. It is not like one size fits all. So at the end, your business partners or your business owners will always say reduce risk, but which framework you use as a CISO, you have to decide it. So that's how CISO's life is. And I was hearing to one of the talks which CISO was giving. He mentioned that one of the business leaders came up to him, and it's a kind of a jokingly he mentioned that the business leader said that for me personally, cloud security is not a big deal because my data is already in such a mess that no one would find anything anyway. So when it comes to data, when it comes to finding things, that's the challenge which CISO has these days. So yeah.
That's nice. That's interestingly you have intuited. Yeah, the revelation of the book is also very nice. You would have taken all the spotlight on you. That's very nice. I mean, to kickstart things off, I mean, can you tell us what's the role of CISO is all about? I mean, why this role is so crucial in today's world and critical as well, because the position lies with some lot of strategies and discussions as far as I know. So why it's so critical in today's real world?
So CISOs are, to state in one line, they are basically business enablers, they call it. So business enablers because they depend on the accountability from 2 levels up and 2 levels down. That is, if you think of the manager, if you think of the associates or the analysts, they depend on them heavily. Plus, if you think of the line managers or the VPs and then the board of directors, so 2 levels up, 2 levels down, they heavily depend on them. And in an organization, they have a very critical function because when we talk about NIST as a guiding principle, a guiding framework, they emphasize the CISO's role as having strategic leadership. So they have to strategize, they have to understand which framework to use, whether compliance is there or not, it is being followed or not, whether you are assessing the risk correctly or not. Then risk management, the CISO's key focus is on risk management because they have to understand specific needs of the business, implement the appropriate mitigation strategies which should be in place. What are the critical areas? Then what are the threats? What are the emerging threats? They have to always keep an eye on that. Then CISOs are also expected to be technically not just inclined, but also understand business. So they are like an interface between the business and the technical teams. So they have a very important role in facilitating the business decisions, I would say. Apart from that, they go with the zero trust architecture. They are responsible for implementing that. Then they're also implementing and responsible for the third parties. When you are in a business, you always depend on third parties to provide you services. Like, say, for example, as an educational industry, I'm sure like InfoSec Train or any other such companies, they heavily depend on third parties for different type of services. Like if you are looking for advertising, if you're looking for marketing, if you're looking for material creation, course creation, content creation, a lot of things are there. So you cannot create everything in-house. You have to depend on other people, other experts in the industry. Even you have to talk to like industry experts to know what is the latest trend going on. Like if I talk about AI, you have to learn about what's the new trend going on, what's new trend picking up. So that is something which they have to do day in, day out. Like they have to interface with vendors. Now, if you have a CISO in your company, they will interface with the vendors. They will see how their implementation is in their environment, how they are managing their services and security in their environment. Then CISO also has to integrate with threat intelligence, because in today's world, every day it's a new challenge. Initially, QR code was not very famous, but now the QR code attacks, the moment it came up as a service, the QR code, immediately the attackers started off new ways of finding out that, okay, how to basically exploit that. So exploiting starts earlier, in the earlier phases, before even you start implementing in your environment. So CISO is to have look out for those things which is new in the environment, how to take care of those on a timely basis. And a very, very, very important thing is that they have to always make sure that your environment is appropriately audited. Plus, you have appropriate policies, procedures, and standards in your environment and enterprise, so that you are free from any kind of fines which can come your way. Then the government will not stop you from doing business in certain countries or some regions because of some like some policies or compliance that you are not following. So these audits basically bring out a lot of things, like your defenses, how good are they? Then vulnerabilities, what are they? Your gaps in your system, your gaps in your documentation, everything is highlighted. So CISO is also responsible for these. So these are some.
That's greatly you mentioned about. And for our audience, there is one instant when Viswadeep used the word called NIST. For that, I wanted to say that's National Institute of Standard and Technology, where the CSF really organizes the cybersecurity frameworks, which really plays an important role in CISO's life as well, because they have to be in the specific guidelines and knowledge about that. That's very nice about. I mean, but over that, there is one thing that comes into our mind. And one thing that is very much important for CISO, it's about threats. So how does CISO protects an organization from the cyber threats? I mean, how, particularly for their organization, how they plan their things?
Okay. So if you want to like avoid threats, or rather, if you want to plan for those threats, they have to plan for having mitigation strategies and understand from a perspective of risk. Because if you say open a small shop which sells medicines, right? It's a small business, you have just started it, but none of the businesses, none of the companies where you are selling a service, a product, or a specific, say, for example, a process, whatever you are providing to the industry, you have to make sure that you understand and anticipate. You do not have to know exactly 100% of the things, but at least 70 to 80% you anticipate. Now, how to do that? They are basically working with other leaders in the industry who know about the like emerging threats. Then they develop proactive measures. So you have to prepare before anything happens to you. Like you put a firewall, you put an encryption standard in place, you put intrusion detection. So these are proactive steps that you take. You don't have to wait for someone to attack and then say, okay, fine, now I will put a firewall. Then they play a crucial role in making the system resilient. You don't have to wait for one fine day when all your systems go down, and then because of maybe a ISP who is having some outage in their environment, and then you think of, okay, let me switch to the other ISP. So resilience is something you always have to think of. So that's a threat to your environment. Then yeah, and then they love automation. So when it comes to AI, machine learning, they put all these things and automate the process to understand what can be the emerging threats be. So that reduces the manual load as well as increases the efficiency in detection of the threats. So those things are basically like empowering the CISO to protect from cyber threats.
So as far as I understand, CISOs are more relatively aligned towards strategy related to security instead of implementing all those security tools to the system or organization. So yeah, keeping that, just in my mind, how does CISO go ahead developing and implementing strategies about their security? So because that is very crucial. You cannot just implement entire thoughts coming into your mind into the company or into an organization. You have to be very precise, which really compatible with the system and the organization. So how would they really do about those things?
Okay, so let me give you some scenarios, or rather some steps that they do, and then let's talk about some examples, like 2 or 3 small examples.
Yeah.
So the first thing that they have to do generally is that they will be their focus is basically to protect the organization's data, assets, and systems, which will align with the business objectives. So if your business or line of business is, say, you are selling a service which is creating websites, or if you are a company who is selling online fruits, vegetables, a retail company, right? Now you have to understand what is your data, where do they lie, or where are they located. That is important. Then you have to know who are the business units, who are the key stakeholders. You have to plan for them. You have to create a goal for them. You have to understand how much risk your company or enterprise or that particular business can take. That is called the risk appetite. So this risk appetite is, again, which is a driving force for them to create these strategies. Then they oversee the assessment, as I mentioned earlier also, that risk assessment is something which they oversee to understand what threats are there, impacts are there, then vulnerabilities are there for each business process. Then finding those risks and creating protection around them, like what kind of protection do they need, what kind of incident response would help them, what kind of data protection would be required, access control would be required. So creating that roadmap, creating that plan, and putting them in your policies, standards, and procedures. So that's the next step. They have to create those procedures, policies, and standards, and you have to train people. You just don't create it and keep it with yourself. Say, for example, I just write a book and keep it for myself. I'll read it. So that's no use, right? So I have to create them. I have to make it human readable or normal people readable so that they understand. They are non-technical people also who have to understand. So create, say, for example, a gamification platform, or create a platform where they engage with that video or audio. Like I know a couple of tools are there, AI tools, which will generate a human being in front of you, and they will speak as if like they're telling you, training, right? Even if it's not a regular person, it's still like, okay, you're telling me, you're talking to me, and you look a beautiful looking person, I will of course listen to you, right? So those things come into play. Then they assemble teams. After doing this documentation, training people, you have to create teams. Like you have to have a very strong security operations center team. You have to have a team who is taking care of the governance. You have to create a team, because you are just one man. You have to create an army, but not a one-man army. You have to create a team of people who will fight for you, right? Who will be some of the people will do proactive actions. Some of them will do reactive actions. So you have to have a team who is taking care of the compliance, the risks, the governance, the security operations. So you have a team of people. So those people are very important to help you facilitate your day-to-day work. Then they have to see that these deployments happen on time. You have written in a document that, yes, it's there. It may be that people are not following it. People are not understanding or interpreting it correctly. Because I have been in some discussions myself where I have myself like faced that I'm not understanding the language. Like if there is a framework, or if there is the implementation of a particular compliance framework, like say PCI, when it comes to the language, it is not you are not an expert in PCI until you take a certification, or if you have been working in that field, or you have been trained in that field. So to make it simple for you, that is CISO's job. They have to write in the policy in a translated easy way so that you know exactly what you have to do. Like, okay, how do I do this? You use this particular technology. You use this kind of a tool. They will not specify which tool, but this type of a tool. Yeah, then they have to measure the metrics, like they are doing all these things. But always, if you are, say, for example, taking a certification, your metric is every day when you give the exam, how well you are doing, how many questions did you complete, how much time you are taking to complete, say, 100 questions or 150 questions. So that is a target for you. That is a achievable or a measure for your environment. So that's like a key performance indicator, which CISO works with. And then they are always focusing on one thing that is called security first culture. So always they will talk in that language where you start thinking about security at all times. So that's basically these strategies they use in the real world. So talking about the example, say for example, a financial company. Now they uses, say, AI-based tools for automation, threat detection, and so on. Now CISO will integrate this AI-driven security platform into your network traffic, unusual network traffic, to understand the pattern and so on, so that to see if there is a breach or not. So these AI tools will automatically block the suspicious activity, and it helps the CISO reduce the response time and minimize the damage from the attacks. So that's one example you can think of, where CISO uses a tool to make sure they strategize how to do it or how to stop the cyber attacks.
This is interesting. I mean, you have explained in a very vast way that the way they integrate with the entire process to the organization, they have to plan, they have to strategize things, and once they strategize their thing, they have to do a dry run. After the test is done, then they have to set up their team. Once the team is ready, then they do the final deployment state. I mean, it's a very tedious task, but need a lot amount of seriousness to just implement those things. While you was addressing that, I got to heard about a word called SOC, that is Security Operations Centers. Keeping that part into my discussion, nowadays CISOs wears many hats. Can you elaborate on their roles in the areas like SOC, as you mentioned, Security Operations Center, governance, we have risk compliance, that is part of GRC, data protection and privacy, and the most, that is crisis management also, because it is very important to understand these pointers.
Correct. No, that's a wonderful question. Like when you talked about SOC, I remember those days when I was a part of SOC, and yeah, that is a very key highlight for any CISO, because if the SOC is performing well, they are like, oh yes, I won the battle today, at least today. So they are happy about the battles basically. But yeah, again, like when we talk about SOC, GRC, data protection, privacy, crisis management, a lot of things they have to take care of. Now, when we talk about, say, SOC is a mix of automation and human decision making. It's not always like I have to sit and one by one find out which are the dirty URLs, which are the domains which should be blocked, and so on. The automation these days, they have made it easy so that you can even extract the URLs which are blacklisted. You can create a list of them, you can push it to the firewalls, and everything will be done for you. So how does your participation come into picture? Because you cannot make a decision directly that whether to block that URL, because I have seen in my past experiences that when you block a URL without appropriately understanding and talking to the business, you might block something which is a business driven URL, and it will stop you from doing the business, which is not something which you want, right? So it will be putting like limelight on you. So that is where you decide, you talk to, reach out to people, you do things. So CISO basically ensures that this operations center has the tools to detect, prevent, react to attacks, critical infrastructures. Then it is properly staffed. It has the appropriate skills, because they from time to time ask you, have you done this certification? Have you done that certification? Which is very important for them to know that, yes, it is not about the certification per se, but it is the process through which you go in the achieving of that certification, which makes you robust. And like your existence in that particular SOC is meaningful, because that process has grilled you so much, trained you so much, given you so much of knowledge that you are equipped. So that is something which a CISO loves, having good appropriate certification, because they can justify to the HR that I'm hiring a SOC analyst who is basically expert in, say, handling people. So I have hired a CISM, or I know a person who is like expert in knowing what different domains of security are. So I have hired a CISSP, right? So they have to justify for the amount of money that they're investing in that person, a single resource. So that is where CISO's task is. Then when it comes to G, that is the governance, policy development, understanding and implementing the frameworks, then regularly updating those risks and strategies and taking them back to the board of directors and the executive leadership, because they have to know what a risk is interpreted in their language. What is the risk to my money? What is the risk to my like availability in the market or trust among people? Because it's not always about money. So quantifying and qualifying those risks, that is CISO's task. Then in terms of risk, as I mentioned, they quantify and qualify the risks. So identify the risk, they run the risk assessment and management program. They understand what is the risk appetite is, how much tolerance my enterprise has, and so on. And compliance wise, they learn about the latest trends in the regulations and standards in the industry. So if you are from a finance industry, you will work on say GDPR or like privacies and all different type of frameworks, or PCI DSS. If you are in a hospital business, then you have to focus on HIPAA and so on. So depending on which line of business you are. Then data protection, that is implementing encryption in the environment, access controls in the environment, protecting the data, because all a client of yours gives you is their data. If they give you your data, or if they transact the data through your enterprise or environment, you have to safeguard it. So you have to make sure there is appropriate data loss prevention tools and so on. So that is data protection. Then privacy part, basically they focus on like what policies are important from PII data, what policy is important in that particular say that country or that geographical region. Because say if you are working in your enterprise is working in California, then CCPA would be important, that is California Consumer Privacy Act. If you are a European Union citizen, the CISO should understand that it should be talking about GDPR all the time about privacy. Crisis management is very important, because when there is a breach, there is a cyber attack, crisis management will be initiated, which wants a CISO to take care of the incident response plan, take care of communications between the legal, the HR, and the different teams, telling them what is going on at the back end and how they should respond to something, and to give a proper like a particular a release, that is called a press release, to the vendors and third parties, like, okay, your data is not at risk because this is the scope of the breach, or this is the scope of the attack, so your data is not at risk. Or even if their data is risk, you have to first understand yourself how much to tell them, because it is not that you start telling everything about everyone during the investigation. Yes, once the investigation is over, of course you have to report it to the authorities, you have to report it to your governing bodies in your area, because within 24 hours, within 48 hours, within 72 hours, so different governing bodies, different locations, they tell you what should be or how much should be told to them. So CISO plays all these different roles, and as you mentioned, different hats.
Yeah, that's true. Again, you used a very interesting word I call PIA. For the audience, I would like to elaborate about this. PIA is Privacy Impact Assessment, if I'm not wrong, Biswadeep. Yeah, that's basically. So, can you just highlight this part a bit more in risk management in respect to CISO? I mean, we know this actually, as far as I know, that it usually processed to evaluate how projects and system affects individuals' privacy, and to ensure that the privacy risk managed effectively. There should be no breach in that deliverable information which is transferring from one part to other part, something exactly like that. So you want to highlight something on that, or we should move to next?
No, I'm fine. So when you are integrating privacy consideration, because a data which belongs to you, not all type of data, say for example, the location where you stay, the phone number that you have, these are all private data. I don't want to publish it on a social platform, or I don't want to give it to anyone who is going on the road and, oh, my phone number is this, can you call me? No. Why should I give it to him, right? Or my social security number, or my PAN card number, Aadhaar card number. These are very personal and private to myself, because these only I use for transacting, right? So these considerations are there into developing and designing the systems and services which basically enforce these privacy policies and how this
Okay.
information is handled within the organization. So CISO's idea is to basically understand what is a data subject's right, and
Hmm.
after that implement privacy impact assessment to
Hmm.
analyze the risks associated with the personal data processing and ensure that there is privacy by design. It is implemented, any tool or any control if I implement, that should have privacy by design. So they incorporate into the system itself. There is privacy measures are essential for minimizing the legal and reputational risk, because a company, if they lose the information for a person, they will not trust that particular flight, that particular company which I have maybe done a business transaction with. I will stop trusting them, so their reputation level goes down. So that's kind of a type of a risk for that company also. So basically,
Okay.
to use these kind of scenarios, they use this privacy by design and do privacy impact assessments.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Vidit. It was very nice to just quote up those part again in the conversation. But as far as I believe, creating a risk-aware culture sounds challenging. I mean, I have seen implementing new things in process sounds challenging. How does CISO go about fostering this culture within the organizations and making smooth? As we have heard about a lot about you about this from you in the last these sessions. Right now, you have mentioned about them building the team, building the process, but going a bit more in depth. What are some key pointers through which they just deep dive to make this process, because I mean system, process, culture, three different aspects we have. So how this culture they foster in an organization that has to be followed?
The first part, as I mentioned earlier also, that they create that policies, procedures, and standards. Now, that's the beginning from where this security aware culture starts. So let us talk about an example where CISO is trying to create a phishing simulation and have a follow-up training. So a CISO implements a monthly or maybe a quarterly or a biannually or a annually phishing simulation program, and the employees receive a phishing test email. This is designed to test basically their awareness. And employees who fall for the test, like, they will be happy to click on that because there may be a free coupon or they ask you to reset the password because you might be at risk. So all these things, when they fall for it, automatically they will be enrolled for a follow-up training session to reinforce how this phishing identification can be done in a better way. So what is the impact on this? That this hands-on approach, it helps the employees to develop practical skills for being better at these recognizing these phishing attacks. Then there is a program that they run that is called Security Champions. The CISO basically creates security champions. That's kind of an initiative where one representative from each department, maybe your IT department, sales department, or if within your IT department you have a development department separate, then the team who is basically doing the service desk task, that team. So every team, they will have one designated employee or one designated expert who is trained exclusively on cybersecurity principles. So they are called the champions because they serve basically like a facilitator. They understand from the security team about the cybersecurity and bring that back to their team and discuss internally about them, so that I don't have to give them training all the time. And it is a continuous process. It's like daily involvement. Plus, they trust their own team members, because if I go and tell their team members, like, boss, can you do this? They'll be say, why should I follow you? Who are you? Go and tell your team members to do what you want, right? Especially like line managers, they are I have no offense to anyone, but they are not very like happy to listen to me, right? So that's why it's important that you make that person as a champion, bring them, tell that you have very great capabilities with you, and just take back this knowledge and spread it among your team. I'm not going and training your team every day. That's another thing. Third thing is they reward the good practices, because I have seen many environment that when you are reporting a phishing email, Or say, for example, there is a cyber attack, prospective attack on your email box, and you feel that something is not right, or you have seen that there is, your laptop is not behaving properly. You get scared. You feel that I might have clicked something, I might be punished for this, I might be kicked out of the company.
This is a nice point. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah, so I have seen people getting scared because I didn't do anything. First thing they say, I didn't do anything. It's like a habit, like from our when we are kids, we do that, right? When we push a guy and they fall into a puddle, or maybe he got a little hurt, we feel that no, that is like a that is like an attack on me. So I didn't do anything. It was he who did the fault. Blame transfer. So this is something which make the CISOs try to make it rewarding. If you alert us, we will reward you anyway. Like maybe we will give you some happy points, or many companies have their point systems, like, okay, I'll give you some happy points, wow points, this point, that point. Or maybe if you alert us for 10 consecutive things, I'll give you a $10 Amazon coupon or something. It doesn't matter. Like $10 in getting reported, like 100 different alerts, that's a benefit for the CISO. He is getting free alerts from everywhere, right? So everyone is working in favor now. So that is another thing. Then quarterly town halls. Like if you have these town halls every 3 months or 6 months, you tell employees what are the new initiatives we have started, how we are working. Because at the end of the day, people don't want to work in silos. They want to know what other teams are doing. It's not a good practice when a company works in silo. If you have an open workspace, if you have an agile workspace, why do you think they are? Because you can just shout from one end to the other end and say, hey, Martin, can you tell me what is this task all about? You just sent me a request. What do I do with this, that, right? So you are interacting freely. And that kind of a setup is important in terms of a town hall also. I know what that team is doing, because most of the time any IT guy doesn't know what sales team are doing, or how marketing team or the finance team is improving their processes, or how they are using our tools and technology. So that's something which is important. And finally, it should be they want to put a system which is called a blame-free incident reporting system. So the blame-free system basically encourages the people to report systems and help the organization detect and make things, like take things faster. Okay. Then these are the positive reinforcements they try to build in security first. Then they bring in gamifications using some videos, like a small series of like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, where they will show that, okay, if there is a particular component like this, what should happen and what not. So those are the things basically the CISO does to make sure there is like understanding in the environment what they should do. This aware culture, security aware culture.
So it was very nicely explained about the culture really plays a great role in implementing the process, as well as making it more vigilant in terms of uh, processing into the system and the organizations, and also in our daily routine. One thing very interesting you mentioned about giving those Amazon voucher. It strikes me a questions in my mind that what role does an open communication plays in security awareness, not in terms of CISO, because that's our core discussion today, but how did it really work? From there, I want you land up into the CISO's responsibility, how he implement this open communications for security awareness to make his task more smoother and easy to implement.
That's a good catch. So yes, from a very broader perspective, when we are not talking about CISO, open communication generally allows employees to be informed about potential threats, steps being taken to mitigate it, how they can be a part of the system. And when they trust the organization's values, their role in maintaining security, they will be more likely to follow those policies. Because if, say, for example, I come and tell you, you have to follow this particular rule from today, your first question would be, why should I follow this? Or why should I follow you? Now, if I second follow-up answer, if I give you that you don't have to follow me, it's a company's decision that is going to make these changes, and this will benefit you in 1, 2, 3, these 3 ways. you will automatically start thinking about it, that okay, this is not the person who is taking the ownership, rather it is the focus from the company that yes, I have to do this. That gives you a motivation factor. Now, a culture of open communication, it encourages the employees generally to report suspicious activities, security breaches without fear. Because when you scare them, like if there is a breach, this will happen, or if there is a breach, you will be responsible. So instead of making them responsible, appreciate their reaching out back to you that there is an incident on a timely manner. Because if they get scared, or if they start discussing with other peers and the word comes not directly from that person, rather comes via 2 or 3 people, that means the word has already spread. So you have to avoid that, and you should have a direct information coming from that particular person who has observed that thing. It should be a first hand observation, not a hearsay that they say. So in legal term, they call it as a hearsay. Like, I have heard people talking about it, but it should not be like that. It should be a first person communication that yes, I saw this happening, and it will prevent further damage. Now, open communication also allows clear distribution of the awareness program, because until CISO or anyone knows what you want to learn, what is your weak areas, what is your gap, I cannot give a training initiative to you. I cannot build a training program for you, because this is for your betterment. This is for your attachment to the business perspective. So if I want you to be a part of the business, I want to have understanding where your gap lies. So I have to make sure that the employees understand their role in maintaining the security, and they actively participate in it. And when the security goals are communicated clearly, employees understand the security, how it aligns with the business objective, and this motivates them. And finally, they get serious about it. So that's how basically the idea should be behind having an open communication.
That's wonderfully explained about. I would also like to introduce in our daily routine as well. This is not for CISO itself, it's something new to learn, to just build up open communication in such a way. And this will allow us to get things done automated. I mean, like, you put all the humans to work, your work done typically, and they just inform you as per the feedback you respond to get the things done. This is a nice way of adding. Yeah, that's very nice. But typically, if you look, there are two sectors which majority take the stake of cybersecurity in terms of safety. One we see there is a financial sector, another we see there's a defense sector. But because economy of any country runs in both two directions, you need to secure yourself from the enemies, and you know, just pump the money to just run the society in the best form. These are two sectors which people usually feel. We may conclude, or we may include later, the defense in our next coming episode with you. But for today, I just wanted to understand, considering the different industries, what are the main concern CISO specifically faces in the financial sector?
So when CISO has to work in a financial sector, the main strictness comes from the regulations. That is GDPR, PCI, then PCI, that is the payment card industry standard, and GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation for Privacy. Then there is a standard called SOX, SOX, that is Sarbanes-Oxley. There is a standard called GLBA, which is called Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. So these are all really regional and national regulations, not any kind of financial sector. When we talk about financial sector, many people start thinking, oh, it's for banks, it's not for me. But no, any service provider to a bank also falls under their purview. Like if there is a insurance company, if there is a company who provides any kind of service to the banking sector, like through, say, for example, they bring in customers and they facilitate the bank to get more customers. That is also a type of a service that you're providing to a financial sector, and you will be falling under the purview. Now, of course, plus minus, which will be your concern, whether you handle payment card or not, whether you handle European Union data or not, whether you handle day-to-day operations in finance or not, bookkeeping or not. But again, you will be falling under the purview. That is one concern. Next is financial institutions, they handle sensitive data. So the personally identifiable information or credit card data or transactional data, financial transaction data. It might not always contain credit cards. It might be a proof of transaction that yes, this kind of a transaction happened. Like you purchased a land, or you purchased a property, you purchased a particular stock in a company. That is a proof of transaction. So that is also a financial transaction data. It might not always contain that credit card data or things like that, but yes, it will be sensitive data, because people will come to know that yes, you have purchased a specific stock, right? And how many units have you purchased? Which date did you purchase? What is the valuation of that purchase? All things will be visible, right? So that is a transactional data. Then account details. Whenever you are creating account in different platforms, maybe it is a banking platform, maybe it's a platform where you do purchase and sales of stock in the market, or if you are doing any financial transaction. So those are very crucial to be safeguarded. So you should have proper data loss prevention system, encryption in your environment, access control, who can access that kind of a data. So you have to make sure that transmission of the data should be secured, storage of the data should be secured. The financial industry is a very, as you mentioned, it's a very cream target and for financial gains, and a lot of different type of common attacks that we hear these days: the ransomware attack, the phishing attack, then fraudulent or fraudulent activities. Then attackers basically try to steal information, steal funds. They try to disrupt the system or communication. They try to hold the data hostage. So you have to make sure, the CISO has to make sure that I have to put controls like fraud detection. There should not be fraud in the environment. There should be proper threat intelligence monitoring for types of attacks that are happening. There should be multi-factor authentication, things like that. Then another thing is, every financial company, they somehow depend on third-party vendors to some way integrate into the systems, because I alone cannot reach to a remote area in a country to bring business for me. So I have to bank on third parties. But how secure are they? That is my concern. What kind of payment processing controls they are having? What kind of IT infrastructure they are having? I don't have any idea. So CISO's concern is, a big concern is that one. So are they following the standards that I am following? Because I, as a banking industry leader, I should make sure that I do not deviate from anything. But I can only make sure for my environment. What about my peers? What about my business partners? I have to make sure they also don't deviate. So I have to have regular audits with them. I have to have regular discussion with them and ask them, do you have these documents in your environment? Do you have the controls in your environment? Now, given the high stake, the financial systems should be always 24/7 operational. So downtime is negligibly acceptable. We cannot have a 4-hour downtime for a business transaction, a banking transaction. We cannot wait for that. So downtime due to cyber attacks, they are catastrophic in that. That's a nightmare for them. So different type of good teams like the Security Operations Center, continuous monitoring, tools like your logging tools, which is a SIEM tool, which is basically for event management and security information, bringing into one single centralized system. That is very important. And overall, like, they should have a good business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan, because that is another nightmare. If you lose business, you will not just lose business, but also reputation. So if you don't want to do that, like suppose your systems are down for one whole day, a banking application down for one whole day, millions of dollars of business gone. Plus, the economy of that country depends on some of the banks, which are the big banks, which give out loans, which transact with big companies and the defense companies. Even they give loans to the contractors, right? Defense contractors also, because they depend on that. Now, if that transaction stops for 24 hours, the economy of that country is gone for like a toss, right? It will be questioned later. How good are their systems? What kind of cyber security does they have? What kind of security they have, right? So we want to avoid that kind of a scenario. So their business continuity plan, where they have measures like maximum downtime, they call it, right? MTDs, MTTRs. So maximum tolerable downtimes and maximum tolerable duration for data loss, right? So these kind of measures they have, how much data they can afford to lose. So these plans should be there. Then your business impact analysis should be done. Your disaster recovery should be well enough, where you salvage the data appropriately. You have teams which will set up at an alternate location immediately. You have switchover plans to your backup servers. You can restore from the backup. You can set it up immediately at a different geographical location, your data center. You can set it up in cloud. You can set it up in a private location, anything. So these kind of things should be there. Then,
I mean, one thing I would like to add, with backup, you mentioned that we keep backup of a lot of many things. Do we keep backup of CISOs also? In case it is not well?
we should have that. We should have a backup CISO or a like an assistant CISO. So in case where a CISO is not available, or he's sick, or he's out holiday in Bahamas, that time your information security manager basically plays that role. So it directly a part of his activity, day-to-day activity, to take care of those things, cover up till he's gone. So your information security manager plays an important role also. He's a bridge between, as I mentioned, like he depends on 2 levels below and 2 levels above them. So 1 level below, who's the manager, he has to be highly supportive and very knowledgeable as much as he is.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, basically these are like they have to keep up to date with the latest emerging technologies and best practices in the industry, new technologies, new frameworks that are coming, any changes in the framework that are coming. So those things he has to be up to date. Plus, with the advent of cloud,